Hello and welcome back to What If Ash was like Paul. So this is like the part where we wrap up Ash's gym challenging Johto and set up for the Silver Conference or the Johto League, whatever you want to call it. So the extreme Pokemon race would go the same as Ash would win. It's just he would use Houndoom in this timeline, as Houndoom would basically be the fastest member in this team other than Firo. I don't want to use a bird Pokemon because it wouldn't really be too easy operating a bird Pokemon. Like you could see Ash and Gary operating Houndoom and Arcanine in the picture I'm using. So yeah, he would use Houndoom. And Houndoom actually speed ties with Arcanine. So I'm just going to say that Houndoom barely scrapes by a win. Instead of earning a Fampi egg from the win, Ash would earn a different looking egg in this timeline. As I don't think Fampi or Donphan would complement this team, and I think it would be more interesting if a different kind of egg joined Ash's team. As then, when the egg hatched, it would be revealed to be a Mareep. The reason why I included a Mareep is because I didn't exactly want to give Ash a Pichu because that'd be a bit too right on the nose if you ask me, because giving Ash a Pichu is too referencing to it's too direct a reference to Pikachu, so I'd rather just give him a Mareep as his electric type Pokemon. Ash would decide to train his Mareep very lightly because he's stupid enough to train a baby with intense training unless you want to kill it or extremely hurt it. So Ash and Houndoom would train very, very lightly with Mareep. Mareep would grow a lot from this mini training as the but that wasn't the only thing that would grow, as the bond between Ash, Houndoom and Mareep would eventually grow too. As Ash would begin to understand like baby Pokemon and Pokemon a lot better than he used to. He had begun to care about them a lot more, but there was still a bit more to learn. So experiencing some time with a baby and looking after it really gave him a new experience. But the highlight of the bonding was between Houndoom and Mareep, as it would as they would develop a parent-child relationship, kind of similar to the one between Noivern slash Noibat and Halucha in the Pokemon XY series, which is my favourite Pokemon series, by the way. Yeah, so after that, Ash would go to Mahogany Town, I think, yeah, that's the name, where he would find a very sad old man named Price who didn't like Pokemon anymore. Yeah, and in this timeline, even though Team Rocket wasn't isn't here because he never met them in Kanto, he would he would use Mareep. He would have a Mareep, a very young Mareep, and Mareep would go and find Piloswine frozen in a glacier and would free it like Pikachu did in my timeline, because when I first saw the Price episode, I just felt bad for the guy because honestly, it was just a big misunderstanding between him, his Piloswine, and yeah. So that's gonna be resolved here with his Piloswine. So now to get back into the main meat of why we're in Mahogany Town to get a gym battle. Ash would start off with Marip, as then Price would start off with Dugong. Dugong would try hitting with ice beams and hydro pumps, but the thing was, Marip would easily avoid those. I would easily land thunderbolts and thundershocks for a lot of damage. Dugong would try its hardest to attack this quick and speedy Marip, but there wasn't much it could do, as Marip would be able to land takedown and thunderbolt on Dugong every time it used a hydro pump or an ice beam. But eventually Dugong was able to land one ice beam, but after that there wasn't much it could do to Marip, who just thunderbolt it, and it was over for Dugong. After that, Price would send out his Piloswine. Ash, knowing his type advantages, would decide to use takedown and tackle, which would do decent damage on Piloswine, but not much. But Piloswine, being stronger and more experienced than Dugong, would be able to land off like ice beams, blizzards, and earthquakes, which would do a lot of damage to Marip. But then, when Marip was about to be finished off with an earthquake, Houndoom's Pokeball would respond on its own, as it will come out of the ball, and it will bark, which would catch Piloswine off guard. As then, Bryce would say, "Hey Ash, what's going on here?" And Ash would say, "I don't know." As then, Houndoom would be looking at Marip to check if it was okay, licking its wounds and looking after it like Marip was its own child, which would astonish Price, but not Ash that much. As then, Ash would decide, "Okay, Houndoom, I think it's time to let you go in this battle, and I think it's time to tag out Marip." As then Houndoom would look at its trainer and would smile, knowing that Ash was doing the right thing. As then Ash would forfeit Marip from the battle and return it permanently, meaning that if Houndoom loses, Ash had lost the gym battle. So then, Houndoom would go up against Piloswine. Piloswine would be able to land an Ice Beam and an Earthquake, but Houndoom would shrug off the attacks and would land a Flame Charge, which would increase its speed. As then, Piloswine would use an Ice Beam, which wouldn't do much damage to Houndoom. As then, Houndoom would finish off with a Flamethrower, which would knock out Piloswine, absolutely dominating the mammoth, like the pig, mammoth, swine Pokemon. You know what I mean? Yeah. Price would then give Ash the gym badge. I would say, "Well done. The next gym is in Blackthorn City Gym. Looks like you've almost finished your gym challenge. Hope you're ready for the Silver Conference." And Ash would say, "Yeah, I am. That was an amazing battle." As then Ash would leave. He would battle Claire next, where he would lead off with Feraligatr and Kingdra. Kingdra would use Dragon Pulse and Hydro Pump, but Feraligatr would charge through with Crunches and Ice Fangs. This would go on for a while, but then Feraligatr would finally land an Ice Fang, which would do a lot of damage. Instead, Kingdra would use a Dragon Pulse, but to no avail, as then Feraligatr would charge through and with a point blank Hydro Pump would knock out Kingdra. After that, Claire would send out Gyarados. Gyarados would constantly use like Dragon Breaths, which would paralyze Feraligatr. And after the paralysis, there wasn't much Feraligatr could do, as then Gyarados would use Dragon Rage a bunch of Dragon Rages and Dragon Breast, which would finish off Relegator. After that, Ash would send out Mareep. Mareep would constantly avoid like Dragon Breaths and Dragon Rages until a Dragon Rage hit it. It wouldn't do that much, but it would annoy Mareep, as then Mareep would get so irritated it would launch a full power Thunderbolt, which would absolutely knock out Gyarados instantly. It would fry the dragon-like Pokemon. Instead, Mareep would gain a lot of experience from this sudden outburst, which would then cause it to glow. As then an electric aura would appear around it, as it would become bipedal and grow in size. As then Fluff would develop into a mane around it, as then it would finish its evolution into Fluffy. After that, Claire would send out her Dragonair. Dragonair will constantly be using Twisters and Dragon Rages to do decent damage to Fluffy, but Fluffy would constantly be responding with takedowns and Thunder Punches, which is a move that it learned from its evolution. As then, Dragonair would use an Iron Tail, as then Fluffy would use a Thunder Punch, which would do decent damage to both sides. Fluffy would then use a Thunderbolt, which would do decent damage to Dragonair, as then it would respond with a Twister, which would do decent damage to Fluffy. This battle would go on for a long time, much longer than the other battles, as both Pokemon were evenly matched in strength, power, and speed. Both trainers would get very tired after a while, as this battle was quite exhausting, as Ash would call for a Thunder Punch, as Claire would call for an Iron Tail. When both moves collided, there would be a massive explosion. There would be a smell of metal and electricity. As then, when the dust settled, the only one standing would surprisingly be Fluffy. As Fluffy would have landed its Thunder Punch a split second earlier than Dragonair, which allowed it to get in damage quicker and harder. After that, Claire would then say, "Here's the Rising Badge, the final badge of the Johto region. Now you're ready to go and compete in the Silver Conference. I wish you luck. I really enjoyed this battle. Goodbye, Ash Ketchum." As then Ash would thank her and would leave, as he would think about how he is ready to put his rivals in their place and beat them in the Silver Conference. Okay, everybody, I really enjoyed making this part. It's quite enjoyable. Anyway, guys, I'll see you later. Bye.